This is Fam Electric Ghost, and we're live on the air with Katherine Sellery for the first time. How are you doing tonight or this afternoon?
Yeah, no, I'm doing great. So nice to be here, Phantom. Thank you.
So we like to talk to people from around the world. Before we get to your story, we always ask every guest a couple questions like, what motivates you and why do you do what you do?
Hmm. Yeah. So I think at this stage of my life, I do what I do because I want to make as much impact as I can in conscious parenting, my specialty, as I possibly can, so that as many families can experience deep connection and feel confident that if there are breakdowns, they can resolve them. So just really, really pulled to do that.
And you've been a TEDx speaker, a three-time TEDx speaker.
Yeah.
You're the founder of Conscious Parenting Revolution,
Yeah,
and like you've got over 2 decades in this space.
I do.
And it's kind of interesting today. I was a sociology major, and I'm
Oh,
a
nice.
French major. I have a couple of hats. I'm a creative, and I do
Right.
software engineering. So I
Oh,
have a lot
wow.
of left, right brain stuff going on. But
Love
but
that.
one thing we always find in like the arts is we try to
Mm,
get into vulnerability and authenticity.
sure.
And
Yeah.
part of that is like observing things around you,
Yeah. Yeah.
like inside of yourself and outside yourself,
Yeah. Yeah.
the macrocosm and the microcosm, and
Totally.
figuring out how that influences both ways.
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah. So true.
So, like in terms of having a consciousness, it's kind of like I always look at what the Victorians had is this idea of looking glass self,
Mm,
of
mm-hmm.
actually understanding the self, and before you could even get into the art, is kind of doing that deep dive.
I
And I think
love
even when
that.
you're
Yeah.
dealing with connections with people, if you don't understand yourself, it's going to be hard to connect with other people if you can't even really connect the dots within your own like mind.
Absolutely true. Absolutely true. You sound like me. Maybe I sound like you. Maybe we're just on the same sheet. Yeah.
So a lot of times when people are trying to look at parenting styles, they might have inherited, oh, well, this is what my great grandfather did. This is what my uncle did. This is what the family does. This is what this community does.
Yeah. It's true.
But then your kid or your children, they might need more than what that is.
That's so true. I mean, our children are our teachers, right? I mean, I feel like I could break into song, but they do. They bring everything up for us, and there's nobody who can teach us like our kids do, and reflect back at like a really good mirror in terms of how we are showing up in their lives. So, if you view them as the teacher, I always think of them as that Yoda. If they're Yoda and I'm Luke Skywalker trying to figure out, how to balance on, the
Yeah.
the little tip of something, and they're the ones that are going, oh my God, I don't think she's ready.
Yeah. That's a
I
different dynamic because the dynamic that the society, where a lot of societies have, is like elders know more.
Yeah, it's
The
true. It's a
parent
real.
knows more. The father knows more. The mother knows more.
It's so
The
true.
grandmother knows more.
And I mean, in honoring that wisdom tradition, of course, there are certain situations where that is true. And where I think a lot of the parents I get to work with get frustrated because they don't feel like they have a receptacle where the person, the child, is actually interested in their knowledge or their wisdom.
Hmm.
And they're upset about, like, but I have so much to share. And, and I think that there are ways that we can strengthen our relationship with our family members, so that if it's in this case the kids, they feel so seen, heard, and understood by us that they want to know more about us.
Yeah, so
So
you
if
don't close that off. Like I think if
yeah,
you have too much of a top down,
yeah,
you don't listen to your kid because you
exactly.
think like they haven't learned enough for them to actually have a voice that's actually relevant.
You're so right. I mean, children are people too. It's a mindset, and looking at children, feeling that they really do have this incredible, role that they play in us, the adults, becoming more wise. That they really have come to teach us. I mean, that mindset opens us up to seeing them and not looking at everything on the surface. Like,
Yeah.
there are the surface disruptions that we see, and we kind of get stuck thinking that the surface problem is a problem, not to say it's not, but usually it's just the symptom. And if we are able to see it as a symptom and we're able to look at it with curiosity about, like, God, I wonder what the underlying unmet need is, that's giving rise to this presentation, then I'm more concerned with meeting them at the deeper level than I am a behavioralist who's only interested in how people drown and getting them to drown politely and coaching for good drowning skills and punishing people when they don't have good drowning skills, as if that was ever the problem. You know what I mean, Fannin?
Yeah,
It's not the
they're trying to
problem.
solve the wrong problem. Well, if
Yeah.
they have a solution and they want to fit everybody into the solution without in software engineering, we have this thing, right, where I get to have a product and I could be the salesman. I'm trying to force that project into a square hole, and it really isn't the solution. And as an analyst, what I'm supposed to do is actually go to the client and find out what is the business problem.
That's
Instead of
perfect.
trying to sell my solution.
Yeah, you got to
solve the
understand the
problem.
circumstances before you know what the right answer is. Yeah.
Yeah. So
My husband's an architect. He does the same thing. Yeah, you got to sit with people.
Well, the questionnaires that you do is kind of like in sociology. Like we do, there's a lot of research, and people do surveys and they do
For sure.
statistical analysis, and they're trying to get those numbers by asking certain questions. Right?
Exactly.
So you ask those questions. Do you have yes, no's? Do you have open-ended? Do you have, if you frame a question a certain way, you can kind of dictate what the answer is going to be.
I have a questionnaire that I give to my parents, and I also have one for them to give to their kids. And we literally go through and ask a bunch of questions like a scientist would to just gather and understand, like, how do they feel about being seen, heard, and understood from their perspective? Do they feel like they can tell you the truth, or do they feel like, like the truth isn't welcome here? Do they think they only have a certain number of things that they can say to you? What's going to make you happy is what they'll tell you. And so do they feel like they have to hide a lot of themselves because they don't want to have to deal with your disappointment?
That's interesting, because when you're a scientist and you're trying to get at that, like that questionnaire design.
Yeah.
Like in sociology and political science, we would design surveys and polls.
Right.
To get certain things. And we have professors that say, hey, you could design this poll to get exactly what you want.
Right.
Right. Or you could actually try to figure out what is actually going on.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Oh my gosh. It's so interesting to see the overlaps and how we can apply those in almost every situation.
Yeah, that's interesting. So I'm wondering, like, so when you build your quiz,
Mm-hmm.
you're coming from like a science mindset or sociological mindset, psychological framework, like which direction is a little bit of everything?
It's a little bit of everything. I mean, I think mostly would come from the perspective of a needs-based paradigm and helping to uncover the way that, like, a population views behavior and themselves. So we do have a quiz, for example. We spent a lot of time working on it. And it's a quiz about how there's something in parents, all of us, that we're blind to.
Mm-hmm.
And what is our blind side? It's kind of like that film that I loved so much until it became controversial, The Blind Side. And and when we uncover that, then we really have the ability to shift dynamics. When we realize, God, I've got this one thing that I'm just blind to. And as a result, in spite of myself, I keep activating retaliation, rebellion, resistance.
Kind of like respond instead of react.
Yes, exactly. So, I mean, retaliation, rebellion, and resistance, these are the things that are most commonly created by parents who use power over. And so if they can learn a guidance approach to parenting, then they're able to completely eliminate activating the 3 R's. And if they cannot activate the 3 R's, they eliminate 75% of behavioral disruptions. That's not insignificant. That's really proportionally huge. And then when you're left with that small part, that 25%, there are all kinds of things that you can do to work to resolve them differently, other than creating more of the resentment flows, the 3 R's.
Because like you think it's societal like analysis, like what a
Yeah.
sociologist thinks about. It's like, yeah, people today, there's certain people have this disruptive kind of ideology. They feel like I should burn it down and
Mm,
see what happens after I burn it down.
that's true.
Versus somebody might have a point of view that's like, well, I think we should come together.
Mm-hmm.
I think we shouldn't have volatility and chaos. But other
Mm,
people think, well, the chaos is good
mm,
because it's going to
mm,
create innovation. But
mm.
they don't think about the collateral damage of the chaos.
Yeah,
So
it's
it's
so
like
true.
there's some kind of there's societal impacts to what you choose to do. If a decision is a not, if even a non-decision is a decision.
It certainly is. Yeah, no,
So you have to look
absolutely.
at the big picture. But if you have people that look at a spreadsheet and they
Yeah,
look at all these values, but they don't really like, you can't really get like everything out of those numbers. Doesn't tell you the whole story.
exactly. Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of it, at least in the parenting context, is that you've got so many patterns of interaction, communication, problem solving that are just passed down through the ages. We sort of started there at the very beginning. And without realizing it, you're leaning into just the old pattern of what happened to me, how I was interacted with. Even though I may not have liked it at the time, I find myself reproducing it here. So, the proverbial unexamined life is the one that's going to just be that wash, repeat,
Yeah,
same disappointments,
bad loops.
that bad loop thing that's going on over and over again. Yeah.
Yeah, that's interesting. Trying to get out of the bad loop is like
Mm,
sometimes you really have to make hard decisions. And I think a
mm,
lot of people like to go with safety. And safety
mm,
is, tendency to be like the wolf is at the door. And if I do something different, then the wolf's at the door. Now, humankind did that for protection.
mm-hmm,
So if you're outside the tribal unit, outside the colony, you
mm-hmm,
got more likelihood if you're by yourself, you're going to get hurt. So
mm,
that same thing happens with virtual like triggers that aren't the wolf, but it feels
mm-hmm.
like the wolf. In this modern world, we have all
So
these
true.
virtual wolves at the door, and then people will just say, well, in order to not have to worry about it, we just push it down and not address
Yeah.
it at all.
Yeah. That's a really good analogy. And I think, one of my mindsets has to do with this idea that we are given the opportunity to have this sense of being bigger than all of it. So back to the consciousness piece. If my sense of self is large enough, then there's nothing that is knocking at the door that I can't just be curious about
Hmm.
because I don't identify with any of the problems that show up at the door. I'm just like, oh, this is really interesting. Look what's come to
It's not a
visit
threat.
today.
It's interesting, not a threat.
It's just interesting. I'm curious about it. I have a relationship with it where I'm really just more of the observer. And so, again, in the consciousness world, the observer mind is the mind that gives you probably the most freedom of all. As long as you're not identified with any of the internal visitors, the emotions that arise, the thoughts that arise, the critic that arises within, as long as you're not identified with any of them, then you can really welcome whatever comes. And you can just be with it just the way it is, can have sort of like that energetic communication where it's like, wow, this is here for some reason or another. It's here to show me something. And I can just be with it just the way it is for as long as it needs to be. And to me, that's the ultimate in self acceptance. And also, like a really non manipulative perspective of what arises, so
Hmm.
that there's a belief, a deep seated sense of everything has within it its own next steps,
Yeah.
and that there's nothing that doesn't have within it its own next steps. I can facilitate that by being centered enough to be able to be with it and have that sense of connectedness. And that in and of itself opens up the next step.
Yeah.
So that's
That's
that's a really, yeah, important realization, I think.
I think a lot of people like they have filters,
Mm-hmm.
and you see everything through your filter.
Mm.
So when you hear something might not hear the exact words that were said. You filter it down to what you expect it to mean.
So true.
And if you can be better with your filters to not just, and it's hard to not have these filters because we're kind of, our mind does that to kind of protect us.
Mm.
So like what we create these filters. So what we get, maybe you get 80% of what you heard. Maybe sometimes you get 60% of what you heard. And so it goes down to this lane. It's like, hey, this is what I think this is. It gets put in that box.
Yeah.
And the problem is, like, if you're somebody, like in music, we have this kind of thing where in music, you have a jazz, like modal jazz fusion jazz player. If he hears a different note than what he expected,
Mm.
it doesn't rock your world. You actually can actually adapt to it. But if you're
Mm.
a classical musician playing Chopin and you know that next note is not the note you heard,
Mm.
that is a hard thing to deal with, right? Because that
Mm.
you want it to be in that frame. It's got to be Chopin. But if it's
Mm.
fusion jazz, I could actually, there's no bad note. There's an opportunity to
Mm.
evolve the piece, which means you're
Mm.
willing to change the piece.
Mm.
And it's a different way of being an artist because
Mm.
you can be willing to kind of evolve the song and know, hey, this song can keep on growing.
Yeah. No, it's such a truth that when we encounter the surprise, it's really all about how we manage the next step. Like, do we make it wrong? Like, no, it's supposed to be that note. Or do we make it like, oh, wow, this is really exciting. Now we get to go in this direction. And, these filters that you talk about, it's so funny because what came to mind when you were speaking was one of my teachers was Marshall Rosenberg, who's the founder of the Center for Nonviolent Communication and the father of restorative justice in the American prison system. And Marshall, it was so interesting, right? I've been teaching communication for 20 something years. And he used to say, never listen to the words people say. And kind of to, what you were just saying a minute ago. And that's what came up for me when you spoke. And I was like, yeah, that's what Marshall said. Never listen to the words people say. I mean, first of all, you don't even know what they said because it's through your filter. Yeah. So all you know is what your interpretation of what they said is. And then you're responding to your interpretation, not what they said. And then that's going to get you in a world of trouble. You could say, hey, could you tell, you could say, here's what I heard you say. Could you tell me if what I heard you say is what you meant? Or is that just me and my filter going off on some wild goose chase? And that gives the person who was the speaker an opportunity to say, hey, I don't know where this went awry, but that's not what I meant at all.
Yeah,
and then you're in the process
to actually have a discussion.
Because now we're navigating what you said, what I thought you said, and finally getting me to the party of where you really were, where I was never there in the first place.
It's real communication.
It's real versus communication.
Like it's a situation that kind of cascades into like chaos or volatility.
Yeah, like I heard this, even though you didn't mean it. Now I'm responding to my mind, and you're, in reaction to my response, and we are nowhere near where we could have been.
Yeah, and you can see that dynamic, like with your father or your mother, like
or a friend, or I mean, it happens everywhere.
And the father says, like, you're not supposed to do that.
Right.
Or you're not supposed to speak to me this way.
Yeah.
Or I heard it
How
that
dare
way.
You speak to me? Yeah.
And then suddenly, like, nothing's going to get heard. Right. You're just going to go into your camp and like, I'm the dad, my way or the highway.
Exactly. Now it's just a disaster. It's just a disaster. So yeah, never listen to the words people say. I thought it took me a while. And then it became one of the greatest truths I'd ever heard. Because if I want to really connect and have a closer relationship, what's in service to that is tuning into you at a deeper level, and just breaking out of the whole reactivity circle of, anger and defiance and the dance, what we call the dance of anger and defiance, which is basically two people that are just not connecting whatsoever.
And then you get resentments built up because like I'm not being heard.
Yeah.
Or I'm not being followed.
You don't get me. You don't understand me. You don't see me. And the other person feels exactly the same way.
Yeah.
They don't feel seen, heard, and
Total
understood
disconnect.
either. It's that huge disconnect. Yeah.
But it's like, so when you start doing these surveys, you start to identify the patterns that people have,
Mm,
like in their parenting pattern or like their
mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
personality pattern. Is it more the personality pattern first or a parenting pattern, or is it a combination of that?
Throughout my trainings, we really are looking at some archetypes, if you want to look at sort of like the personality pattern and the archetypes. And for sure, a lot of the archetypes are coming out of the traditional parenting model, the top down model, which is about, I'm the mother, I'm the father. And just by virtue of role, there's power. And by
Mhm.
virtue of the role and the power, there's supposed to be a typical response. And if that response isn't what I thought it was going to be, then there's a viewpoint that it's disrespectful. And
Mhm.
now I have to discipline this disrespectful person because I'm not going to let them grow up being disrespectful to their elders, when reality is they were never disrespectful in the first place. And that label and judgment just gets in the way of connection and understanding. Children are people too. I mean, there's a negative view of children.
Mhm.
And it's that negative view of children that gets in the way of just seeing their behavior as the tragic expression of an unmet need, seeing the behavior as a drowning behavior, as, oh my God, they don't have the skills to be able to navigate this situation. They don't have the skills to express it. We talk about learning an emotional vocabulary so that you can name it to tame it. And then Rosenberg would go one step further and say, well, that's all fine and good. Let's name that feeling. Let's not identify with it. I have a feeling, I'm not my feeling. So I can be with the feeling and I can actually live with the feeling, even if it wants to stay the way it is, because I can be with it just the way it is. I don't need to manipulate myself that I shouldn't have a feeling. Whatever
Yeah.
the feeling is, it just is what it is. It's not good. It's not bad. It's not right. It's not wrong. It is a signal. He said it was like the light on the dashboard flashing. It's probably telling you to pull over and change your oil.
Yeah. You got to fix something in the machine. It's like, and
There's something internally going on that needs to be addressed. And with that needs based paradigm, that means that feelings and needs are connected. And this feeling is connected to an underlying need that's either met or unmet. If I'm the happy go lucky kid, you could say all my needs are met. And if I'm the one who's grumpy and stroppy and having a really bad day, there are a lot of underlying unmet needs that need to be addressed. And rather than getting mad about the stroppy behavior, instead, you can be like, wow, seems like there are a lot of unmet needs here. What can I do to be with you in this and help and support you to meet your needs in a way that you're having trouble meeting them now?
also could be like your parent actually wants the home to have a certain vibe. And if that child is not helping that vibe, it's like they're having a discordant day.
And
So
yeah,
then, like, so that makes the parents like, I want this to be a harmonious day.
yeah,
Anything that goes discordant or dissonant, I can't have. And so, it not trying to solve the root cause of the dissonance, they say the dissonance shouldn't be.
as if it's kind of back to your Chopin example. Like, it's like, well, that note doesn't belong here. Let's fix you and get that note so that it's proper. What's wrong with you that you can't play the note I need? And we're back in the blame game.
Mm-hmm. So
Yeah.
that does it take a lot of work once you get somebody to identify in a certain style of parenting, right?
Yeah.
And
I
if
mean,
do they disagree with it? Do they fight against that identification and say, well, that's not, you must be wrong?
I've had people, I mean, I've had people who struggle with the idea because they think it's permissive.
Mm-hmm.
And I would say that's probably the biggest flashpoint, is where somebody sees behaviors that are one person would call disrespectful. Another person would call inappropriate. Another person would call wrong or bad. So, these are falling apart behaviors and they're being done in such a way that they're triggering the adults around them into the judgments about them. And so that's a whole dance, right? And so getting out of that dance in and of itself opens up possibilities. Getting out of that dance requires that the adult in the circumstances go, all right, I'm going to just suspend my judgment of this behavior for a second, long enough for me to just depersonalize, recognize that person is a separate entity from me who's falling apart for no reason whatsoever to do with me. And I'm taking it personally, like it's directed at me, when it's
Yeah.
not. It's about them. They're the ones falling apart. They're the ones struggling to meet their needs. They're the ones who need our love and support, and really wrap them up, pour them a cup of hot cocoa, let them know they're not alone, that you're there with them, and their demeanor will shift so fast.
But do people have the wherewithal or the capacity to, if they were not the kind of person or parent that will actually de-escalate and get the cup of cocoa,
Mm,
they're the one that's gonna like slam the door, slam the table, start,
sure.
raising their voice if that's what they know.
That's what they know. That's what they do. But they can also begin to have self awareness that this is now all about them, that this child didn't make them feel that way, that this child isn't responsible for their actions and behaviors, that the way they're now behaving is their own tragic expression of their own unmet needs, and that they're the ones who need the hot cocoa and the blanket now. They need somebody in the room to say to them, wow, I can see this has really struck a chord in you. You're not alone. I love you just the way you are. I'm sorry this is so hard for you. This was never about you in the first place. How can I help you to find your center?
So it ends up being like where they might think the child needs to go to a therapist, and maybe they do, but
Maybe they do.
they have to go to a therapist. They might have thought the whole thing was the child needs to go to therapy.
Yeah. So it's usually, that dropping into, wow, this is my inner child that's wounded. This is my inner child that didn't seem to have the love, care, and support. My inner child that needed to be seen, heard, and understood from its perspective. That's actually being activated. The thing out there that I'm blaming all of this internal experience on actually is just a catalyst. It's a catalyst that's putting me in touch with my own pain, my unresolved trauma. And I'm so thankful that I've been able to find my inner wounding so that I can be with it and allow it to heal.
Yeah, so that's a starting point to like, okay, it's a self-examination.
It's a starting point.
Like that looking glass self kind of analysis, self-analysis.
Absolutely.
Figure out like, did I have imposter syndrome? Did I have like
Yeah. I mean,
tendencies, or I came from a narcissistic household or something like I didn't know.
Absolutely. Michael Jackson used to talk about the man in the mirror, right? And so it really is the man in the mirror moment where it's like, oh my God, I wonder if this is all me. And if I just addressed this right here, that over there would change. And so we get out of manipulating that over there and into recognizing that there's no out there, that, everything that I'm experiencing, I'm projecting.
Yeah, it's all this projection on like the other. Like you see in the society, the other is the cause of my discomfort. So if I change the other, it's going to solve my problem. Then they find out like I still am uncomfortable. I'm still not happy.
Exactly.
I went and I limited what the other could do, but I'm still not happy because it wasn't ever about them.
It was never about
you.
That's so insightful. That's exactly what it is. That, for whatever that fractured sense of self that isn't able to hold it all is pushing it out into the outer world and blaming the outer world for their experience, my experience. So the ability to be like, wow, this has nothing to do with you. You've catalyzed my reconnection with this part of me that has been waiting for me its whole life. And I'm really thankful that now I get to be with it.
That's where this can apply. Like I said, we were talking about microcosm, macrocosm.
Yeah.
It applies inside the home, inside the classroom, inside the boardroom, in all relationships, or whether they're micro or macro,
Absolutely. Yeah, because we take us with ourselves everywhere. So there's no room I walk into where I don't bring me along. But there are certain rooms where, and it's usually our closest friends and our kids and our partners, that we care about so much that when something they say or do that we're having trouble with happens, that's when we really get activated, right?
Mhm. Yeah, because the triggers, like you learn how to deal with a trigger. The big trigger that everybody knows is like the road rage. Like the guy,
Yeah,
you didn't mean to cut him off, and then he suddenly is like going like 0 to 100. It's like why? But,
exactly.
but you don't know what happened with him the moments before that.
Precisely.
All you know is what happened to you
Yeah,
in
their
that
response to
moment.
being triggered. And
Yeah,
then they're blaming you as if you caused it. We're
yeah,
back to the catalyst and not the cause. I might have catalyzed it, but I'm not the cause. That's already in you. It's
yeah,
just been waiting to explode on me. And now you're a toxic waste dump, just splattering your toxicity all around you,
yeah.
which is
Because it's
why
like
it's important to address our triggers.
yeah, because a lot of times the people think it's like is like what I'm trying to provide in the moment is not just what is in the moment. It's like all the moments that led up to it, like the 10 years that
Sure.
brought you to this point. So
Yeah.
sometimes if somebody has like this program, oh, there's a 10-step diet, but like maybe it works for you
Mm,
because you're in the right position, you're in the right
mm,
frequency to deal with it. But this other person,
mm,
maybe they're not because you didn't factor in. It's not just the 10 steps, it's up to the point that
mm,
where you were when you wrote those 10 steps,
mm.
it applied,
Yeah.
but maybe it doesn't apply to everybody.
Yeah, no, it's so true. And I mean, that's always hard when you think you're the answer grape. And, I got the answer, and we do that with our kids too. And, that's where it's like, but why can't they just learn from me? Kind of going back to where we started. Why can't they just take my good advice? And one of the things Marshall used to say was, nobody wants your advice. Like, if they say they want your advice, get it in writing and have it notarized because it's not true. Nobody wants it.
And that's a hard thing to deal with because people are thinking like I'm going to give all my benefits of my experience,
Yeah.
all the lessons learned, and it's going
Yeah.
to be this. And it's like it's some like oral histories within cultures. Their oral history, that the
Totally.
grandma is telling you this story. I'm Cherokee,
Yeah.
Blackfoot, and
Absolutely.
they're telling you a story. And there's a lot of wisdom in these things.
Yep.
But he's like it's like okay, that's a generalized historic family tribal thing, right? That's no, that's this is our oral history. But this is a moment that's out that's like this is its own moment. And maybe that lesson learned works for these things, but it doesn't work for this thing.
It's so true. It's so true. I mean, there's so many times where I think about some of the time you've got kids who are prepared to borrow from your experience. But most of the time, they have to go out and scrape their knees and fall on the ground and pick themselves up and learn it on their own. And that's one of the things I think as a parent that's just really aggravating. And it's one of those where you have to take lots of deep breaths and just be like, oh my God, I tried to tell them about this 400 times, but now they learned it because they had to learn it on their own.
Yeah, it's like when you're riding a bicycle, man. You got to get that groove to get the
You have
balance.
to learn it. Yeah, you have to like have it in your DNA. You have to internalize it. And sometimes you only do that by actually living it.
You have to actually do it. You have to fall down. Like a
You
skateboard.
got to.
You can't get the balance and how to actually use it.
Yeah,
And somebody can tell you, but they can't be on a skateboard with you.
I
Like you have
know.
to actually
I
get
know.
it.
I know. I mean, I feel for all of us. Oh, so hard.
So the hidden patterns that parents repeat without knowing, like what are some
Hmm.
examples of that?
Hmm. Yeah, I mean, one of them that comes to mind, I remember a parent who was really worried about their child swimming, even though the child was a good swimmer. And it was, again, an example of their own incompetence at swimming
Mm,
being projected on the child. And then, kind of almost, if it had gone unchecked, fortunately, this was a clued in parent, like, I feel like this may be all about me. And it was like, well, tell me the story, and it was all about them. That, this was a kid who was capable and competent and was pushing the envelope and excelling in ways that terrified that parent. And the desire was to hold the child back to make the parent feel safe.
Yeah.
rather than really tuning in to where the child was and knowing what was okay for the child that might have been really risky for you and obviously was a trigger for you. But when I really like took some deep breaths and I allowed myself to see my child as a separated, individuated human being, I could see that, nope, with their skills and their competency, this is actually like very impressive and doable. And rather than wanting to project my fear onto them and create limitations in their consciousness, I'm going to support them and I'll go take care of myself and what's coming up for me on my own rather than splashing it all over them. That's one example. I remember with my dad, I came home. We lived in Hong Kong for 30 something years. So we would come home in the summertime with the kids. And I asked him to watch our daughter while I went off to run some errands. And sure, I'm happy to do that. And when I came home, I couldn't find her. I said, Dad, where is she? Well, she disrespected her grandpa. I said, whoa, really? Like, what happened? And he said, well, I told her it was time for her to come have lunch and she ignored me. So I told her to go to her room. And I was like, oh my gosh. So she'd never been punished. So it was really a big deal. And I went downstairs and she was obviously very upset and crying and very young, 6 maybe. And I said, I hear Grandpa got really upset. And she was, yes, he said, I disrespected him, Mom. I don't even know what he's talking about. I was just finishing my painting. And then I was going to come have lunch. And he got so mad at me. And then he told me to go downstairs. And, she was just so confused. So I went upstairs and I sat with my dad and I brought my daughter and I sat between him and I said, I feel like we've had a huge breakdown. And I said, Pia, tell me what you just, tell Grandpa what you just told me. And she did. And I said, Grandpa, this is maybe a different way of looking at that. And I said, Pia says, and you told me that you felt like she disrespected you. And I said, I don't actually think she did. I think she just was going to wrap up her painting and come on over. And he was 80 something at the time, I remember. And he took it in. And about 2 or 3 hours later, he came and found me and he said, you know what, honey? It's a better way. It's a better way.
Right. That's pretty good. That age.
A beautiful story. Yeah. What a
actually,
testament to my father that he could overcome 80 something years of programming. And it was a story about his childhood. Of course, it had nothing to do with my daughter. Yeah, right. Because whenever somebody told him to do something, he better come right now, young man, or he got in trouble.
Yeah.
Yeah. So when it happened here, that's that transgenerational thing that just came right through him. But what I was so proud of was that he could learn.
When he pivoted, it didn't take like weeks or months to pivot. He did it like an hour.
The same day.
Yeah, that's like astounding because
God bless him.
You would think that a lot of times older generations are so stuck in the dogma, they're stuck in what they know.
I know. I agree with you.
Get out of it.
It was so impressive, and I was so thankful that he was that man. Yeah, it was really, really sweet. Beautiful memory I have.
Because I have a 25-year-old daughter, and her generation has a lot of new ideas, like about how things should be.
I have one of those 25-year-olds.
And they're always reframing things, and it's like, oh, I got to remember pronouns, and I have to remember this. I have to remember a lot of rules, and it's like, oh, well, I have to be very careful.
That's true. I hear what you're saying.
Because she has a lot of rules and etiquette with language.
Yes.
That in my generation, we didn't think of it that way. Our parents probably thought we were weird. So
it's a really important point you bring up. And my daughter is actually 26 and she's getting her PhD in clinical psychology. And we talk about this a lot: cancel culture, pronouns. And I kind of just go back. First of all, if you can remember, then I think it's lovely. It's really just an act of consideration to the other person's sense of self, right? Mm-hmm. And if you can't remember, and really, I mean, it is a lot to remember, and it's so outside of our vernacular. It's so outside of our lived experience. It's brand new. And she said, the problem with cancel culture is that people can't screw up.
Yeah, you can't like the problem I have sometimes I tell her, okay, just the lesson learned from my experience is you seem to be so tight on your rules. If
Yeah,
somebody breaks it, then you get a little triggered, right? And
exactly.
then you get mad or you
Cut them
wanna
off.
cut people off. It's like, is that really the evolved way to do it? Like if
Hmm.
you wanna have harmony,
Yeah.
cutting people off doesn't create harmony.
No, I'm really happy we're talking about this. It's something I've spent a little bit of time thinking about because, Marshall Rosenberg never listened to the words people say. Where are they coming from? And if somebody screws up a pronoun, but they're coming from a place of, this is nothing to do with you. This is all about me. And, I'm not projecting onto you anything. Um, I think it's dangerous when we start getting um, so demanding about how we're addressed.
Mhm.
And there was a situation, my daughter was at USC. She graduated from there, I don't know, maybe 3 or 4 or 5 years ago. She's been in her PhD program for 4 years. And there was a situation at school where somebody was canceled. It's probably written up somewhere if you Google USC and cancel culture. And the head of school had to get involved and had to really, address this issue as it was showing up on that campus. I'm curious where it is now. Your daughter and her response, that tells me something. I feel like my daughter and where she is with it has come a long way to acknowledge that the ideas behind something like cancel culture, which is to address those transgenerational, irrational, unconscious projections that can be hurtful, has a lot of merit behind it.
Yeah, I agree with that.
And it can also create other breakdowns.
Yeah, that's the thing you worry about is like if you're trying to go toward harmony, you're trying
Yeah.
to go toward it,
Connection.
connection and expansiveness. If
It's
you
not
do something,
necessarily a solution.
yeah, it sometimes puts you back into lanes.
It
And,
does.
and if you put it back into silos, then you
Yeah,
get separation. It seems counterintuitive to what you're trying to do.
it is.
So, but it's just like this big picture it and say, well, I understand you have these rules and norms and you want people to respect it. But just because somebody doesn't maybe get it or remember it doesn't mean they're disrespecting it and they're trying to be volatile toward you. They're actually
Exactly.
so if you understand it in that way, then maybe if you're not going to just automatically just I'm going to cancel this person right away. It's like no, maybe you don't do that. So yeah,
Yeah.
it's just sort of
Yeah.
like degrees of like what where are you on the spectrum on it? Like how far are you gonna go? Are you real strict or you're not so strict?
Yeah. I just think that we have to keep our eye on what the point is. And if the
Yeah,
point is about connection and understanding, and if, it's about, if it really is about changing behavior and acknowledging great deals of nuance. I think about the gender fluidity question, for example, and how I think it's pretty well documented
yeah,
that, there's a lot of masculine and feminine energy in everyone. And that your gender, whether you're, biologically female or biologically male, is one component of gender, but it's certainly not the whole story.
no, it's very
And
diverse.
right, it's so nuanced. I
In
love the
indigenous culture,
nuance.
in indigenous cultures, like there's a lot of
That's
gender. Well,
interesting. Yeah.
there's a lot of like if you go into history of a lot of indigenous peoples, it wasn't
Makes
just male
sense.
and female. It's very wide, a very wide spectrum, wider than you would imagine.
Which
And
makes it seem like it was more tuned into reality and just the
yeah,
way things really are, as opposed to these like, made up categories.
it's arbitrary,
Um,
or
yeah,
it was tied to a certain structure.
it's just very
It-
structured. It's like
yeah,
about anatomy as opposed to, really sensing energetically. I mean, we have all been around, a particular gender that is biologically one and yet shows up with all the characteristics of the other.
Yeah. Well, a lot of
So,
times in the creative space, I run into a
yeah,
lot of people that show shades of everything, right?
yeah,
Like, a lot of times as an artist, you call
so
to like
true.
this idea that divine feminine is in a lot of like the artist
Yeah,
minds.
yeah,
That like a lot of
absolutely.
times when we create, we a lot of artists I've talked to, like
Yeah,
they pull from either side. Like I've talked to female singer songwriters that pull from like a masculine side on certain things,
absolutely.
feminine side on other things, and then same thing with the men. You have
I'm
this.
curious though, like why does it evoke such a strong reaction in some people?
Some people are so tied to like a dogma that they were kind of like there's an ideological structure they grew up with.
Mm,
And if you get a guy like a Bowie, you
mm,
get a guy like somebody like Brian Eno, or somebody that's like gender bending or calling from a feminine
sure.
side in their music, and they just can't handle it. Like other people look at
Yeah,
it, oh, that's art. Other people they get offended. They get
yeah.
they get offended. They actually take it as like an affront
It's
to
got
like,
nothing to do with them. I mean, it's that question of like, why does this matter so much to you? Like,
yeah. So
why does that person's authenticity and expression of their soul in any way, shape, or form have anything to do with you?
and then the thing that really kind of freaks me out is like this person will say their freedom is the right to actually suppress this other person.
That can't be possible.
That's how can
Yeah,
you your
yeah,
idea of
that
freedom
can't be
is bullshit.
possible. I mean,
How can you suppress this other person as your freedom?
yeah, how can my need, I mean, if my value is around freedom, if that truly is my value, then how is it possible that I am going to need to somehow restrict yours in order for me to be free?
That's because like you're paying too much attention outside yourself, right? And maybe you're denying things about yourself, and when you see that person,
It
it bring
activates you.
it activates you because you're like, oh, I actually feel that way and I shouldn't.
Yeah,
So
for
seeing that
sure.
person triggers you to, and you don't. In order, your solution is to not see that person, so you don't have to address yourself.
Yeah, that's the nature of being triggered, isn't it?
Yeah,
Is
so
that, I'm just going to focus on you as being the problem rather than the fact that you've activated inside of me something that's put me in the problem zone. And rather than deal with this, I'm going to push it outside of me and make it all about you.
yeah, I think we're kind of living in a society right now that's really the real volatile point where we see
Mm,
a lot of that happening in the macrocosm.
I agree.
There's a
Yeah.
lot of macro stuff cosm, so it's bleeding into our microcosm. It's going either way, but it's like, oh, this seems like there's a tilting point.
Mm, mm,
There's a volatility point. Like things are getting a little like we haven't learned lessons, or we
mm,
did and we forgot them,
mm.
and now we
You
got to learn
know,
them again.
yeah. Yeah. It sure has heated up. That I'll acknowledge. It seems to really be that there's a lot of percolating that's going on that's bringing these things maybe to the surface to be addressed a little bit deeper.
Yeah, I think at some point you have to deal with the elephant in the room. Like
Yeah.
sometimes it just happens. Like you can't ignore it. Right.
Mm,
Like I can try to ignore it, but when it gets to when I walk on the street, I actually see it,
yeah.
and then like, oh, that's hard to ignore.
Yeah. Yeah. And maybe that's what's happening now is that it just has to be so obvious and so in our face that we'll finally actually address it. And if that's the case, then I guess it's a hallelujah.
Yeah, well, like as a Buddhist, we kind of think that things are supposed to happen.
No.
Like there's patterns, there's things are supposed to happen the way it's supposed to happen. It's like you could try to make it not happen.
Yeah.
But there's a trajectory in the universe that's going to lead you toward that no matter what. Like
Yeah.
so you're going to have to address it whether you want to do it or not. It's just going to happen.
The way we talk about it is the present moment is inevitable.
Yeah.
This is what it is. It is what it is. It just, again, we're back to the land of just dealing with what is instead of trying to make it wrong, trying to pretend it's not there or trying to blame it on somebody. I mean, ultimately it's just like, okay, this is mine to deal with.
And you don't have to win everything. Like you can have little wins. You can have
Mm,
you don't have to go from 0 to 100 every time.
mm,
As an artist mindset is like we continually do our repetition and our rehearsals,
Mm,
our versions of our drafting, what we're
mm,
working on, knowing that like the 100 drafts before I get to the final, those aren't mistakes. Those are like
absolutely.
rungs on the ladder for me getting to where I need to go. It's,
Absolutely. Yeah. No, it's so true. I mean, how do we look at mistakes, right?
yeah, I look at happy accidents sometimes are better than what I planned.
Absolutely. Oh my God. Yeah. No, I completely agree with you.
And a lot of times people are so into perfection. And we have a lot of tools today with like the undo button
Yeah.
for an artist is like, oh, you really shouldn't have that.
Mm,
Because like sometimes I need to actually keep that there
mm,
so that I
mm,
can actually learn. If I keep on undoing it,
mm,
then what have I done? I'm not actually learning from my what I just did.
mm.
I'm kind of
Yeah.
erased it to not deal with it.
Mm. Yeah. I agree with you. I think that's sort of very poignant. If we have the mindset that, you know, again, kind of back to what we were talking about earlier, everything that shows up is welcome. Like it's not wrong, it's not bad. It's something that I get to be curious about. Like, huh? Like I wonder why this so-called bad thing has shown up in my life, and I wonder if I can just be neutral to it. And that's getting bigger than what's bugging me. That's having that huge sense of self, which we touched on. You know, that sense of self that's so much bigger than my thoughts, my feelings, my interpretations, and living in that space where I truly experience life as the observer consciousness. That's cultivated through the practices, whether it's meditation or some kind of prayer or whatever it
You know,
is
breath
for.
work or anything
Yeah,
like that.
exactly.
All those things that like from an Eastern, I lived in Japan for 2 years.
Okay.
So it was like Tai Chi
Yeah, I
and
love it.
drinking tea instead of all kinds of different teas and breathing
Yeah.
exercises and just being at even though we were working hard. I was
Hmm.
in downtown Tokyo. I was doing some software stuff, but I would go off and do Tai Chi in the
I
middle of the
love
day.
it.
You could go off and actually meditate in a park. They had these
I
little
love
parks
it.
all over Tokyo that had these little like Shinto shrines and things, and you could go in there and just kind of decompress and kind of be in nature. These ponds and trees in like the middle of this real modern city, and you could just go off and kind of meditate. And I was like, wow,
Yeah, it sounds
it, it was just
sounds like
something that
such a
was like,
good way to live, right? Such a good way
yeah,
to live.
I found it was a good way to kind of walk away. And like walk away, just don't sit there in the cube. Like sometimes I gotta walk away from the cube, go walk to that park,
So true. Get that
and
different
get out of
perspective.
it's a different mindset.
Yeah. So nice.
I think it's important to just like be open to it because sometimes we get so tunnel vision. It's like there's only one way. I always
Absolutely.
like to think there's like multiple ways to get to something.
I completely agree. Yeah. So, so true.
But it's just in terms of your websites, like your heart of cambo.com. If people click on that, what do they find there? How do you what do that's how they connect with you?
Yeah. I'm not really sure what this heartofcambo.com is, to be honest, because that isn't mine. We're
No, it
the
wasn't yours?
Conscious Parenting Revolution.
Oh, so maybe I got the
And
wrong one.
yeah, and the best thing for people to go to is if they'd like to come to freeparentingbook.com, I give away my 7 strategies to keep your relationship with your kids from hitting the boiling point. And
Okay.
so the 7 strategies, freeparentingbook.com, or you can go to the Conscious Parenting Revolution, in which case you'll get dropped into my ecosystem. And from there, there's, kind of practical support. A lot of it is available for free, where you can download, a lot of support around gaming and day-to-day problems with your kids that you're dealing with, and problems that can be resolved in different ways than maybe you've thought about so far.
Okay. That's really important. So I think that I want to thank you for giving us all the information you've given us today. And
Absolutely.
yeah, just it's like for some reason that was on the site on Podmatch. I don't know why, but
I don't know why either, but glad you caught that, and can go out in the show notes.
yeah, I'll pull that when I do push it onto the other platforms. But
Okay, sounds great.
But I want to thank you for being here today and having our
Such a
discussion.
joy. Thoroughly enjoyed chatting with you. We obviously are very aligned.
Thank you.
Very aligned. Yeah. So nice. Thanks so much, Phantom.
Bye bye.
Bye bye.